I'm Charlie Milton. I run alliances for Censornet. I'm going to talk a little bit about embracing the public cloud, the SaaS element of what Richard and the EBS team were talking about earlier. We're all using it, whether we like it or not. The public cloud is a thing that, regardless of what IT teams are trying to achieve, the employees of our companies will be finding ways to use SaaS apps that we've never really envisaged, and that brings with it inherent risk. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we can grapple with that challenge. It's really important as the technologists in an organization, obviously with the help of EBS, that we are securing organizations, but we're also not seen to be holding them back, slowing them down. And so there are a couple of approaches I'd like to compare in this presentation with you that might work for you. So really what I'm going to talk about a little bit is the evolution of cloud apps a little bit. A flaw in the approach that a lot of organizations have been taking over the last 4 or 5 years, while that plethora of cloud applications has been getting out of control, mostly, for most of our organizations. I'm going to then compare that with one of the big players in this space. So most of you are Microsoft customers of some sort, whether you like it or not. They have some technology built into their higher suites, their E5 type licenses that does this. So I thought I'd compare their approach with the approach that we take, which we think is really focused on enabling medium-sized organizations, or at least any organization that is budget and or IT staff constrained, which I don't think narrows it down very much, with that Microsoft approach, and then look a little bit towards the future. So let's just talk a little bit about the evolution of SaaS. Is it sprawl? Is it shadow IT? I mean, there used to be this phrase, shadow IT. I don't really subscribe to that anymore. I mean, I don't think, if your accounting department decides to adopt an application that's a fantastic application that makes their accounting much more streamlined, and they do that without the knowledge of necessarily the IT department, that's not SaaS. That's not, that's not shadow IT. That's just good business sense. But what we are seeing is a real increase in SaaS applications being used, and therefore a real increase in the attacks and the risk that brings for your businesses. And I'm not a scaremongerer. I don't subscribe to that at all. But if you look in 2023, the number of attacks, and within attacks we talk about malware, but we also talk about the loss of confidential information to SaaS apps. I'll give you a nice example of that in a minute. Increased really dramatically. If you look at the sort of average mid-size enterprise in the UK, they're using 300 and odd SaaS apps across their business. And actually, when you start to count it up, that's not surprising. I mean, certainly in my head, I can get to 100 and something that I use on a monthly basis. And really, what we've got here is the interface of your employees and really clever SaaS applications leading to risk for your businesses. And that's what we've really got to try to get to grips with, again, without slowing the business down. So lots of numbers. The majority of these SaaS apps are not managed by the IT team. Go back 20 years, every single application that your business used was paid for and managed by the IT people. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the environment we're working in, and if you look at what this is doing, really what this is saying is that however much you train your staff, they're going to find ways to do their job more efficiently, and they will do that to the detriment of your cybersecurity or the integrity of your data, and then at the risk of reputational damage, massive GDPR fines, which aren't just limited to large organizations, they apply to small organizations as well. So really, we've got to try and put some technology in place to control that problem, okay? So here's an idea. We could do this. We could look at the SaaS apps that we think the business needs. We could do a bit of evaluation. That might take us, I don't know, 6 months, lots of professional services. And then we could tell the business, and imagine how this would go down, what the approved list of SaaS applications that they can use is. And then we're going to block everything else. Now that was the way that the landscape that I'm talking about, the CASB, the Cloud Application Control Market used to work. And this went down very badly. The discovery phase always missed things, and obviously it's a point-in-time discovery. That environment is constantly moving. The communication was then, oh bloody hell, IT or our managed service provider are telling us what we can do as a business. How very dare they? And it just didn't work. So it really is flawed. But then again, if you look at why employees are doing this, I mean, sometimes they don't appreciate what the risks are. I do agree with that, and there is an education piece in here. And cyber awareness training and education is critical. That is actually part of our platform as well. But the majority of people who behaved insecurely knew that their actions were potentially risky, and yet they did it anyway. And I think that's human nature. I'm doing it anyway because I believed it was the right thing for the business. It was the right thing for me, with the amount of time I have to do my job, to use these SaaS applications to get my job done. And so I will bypass the guidance that I've been given, I will bypass the security controls. I will go quite a long way to bypass the security controls, because it helps me meet what I'm employed to do by the company that I work for. Okay, so let's look at how Microsoft does it. And I'm not picking on Microsoft; they're just the big one. There are others. There are other enterprise CASB vendors, people like Zscaler, Netscope, McAfee have a product as well. The majority of them work like this, and this is a screenshot from the Microsoft user interface, and here they have a very nice list of applications, and you can search for example, here we've got some Microsoft products. What this allows you to do is to say, for example, Microsoft Power BI is at a risk level. Now, think back to Richard's example of Salesforce being one of the first SaaS apps. This is still a nice example. What's the risk of using Salesforce? Is it high? Is it low? It's neither of those things. It depends on who's using it and what they're doing. And yet the majority of CASB vendors try and categorize a whole application at a risk level. So take another example. Dropbox, for example. Now, most of you are using Microsoft. I imagine a lot of you are using OneDrive. That's probably your primary way of sharing documents. Certainly, that's the way we were sharing this presentation before today. But Dropbox is not a corporately sanctioned file sharing application. Is it high risk, medium risk, or low risk? You just can't define it at an application level. Is it critical for the business? Well, damn right it is for the legal department, who are trying to sign a deal with a company, and Dropbox is their primary way of sharing applications. So they're going to use it, aren't they? So we've got to manage that. We've got to manage that risk. And so the way we approach it, and this makes it very simple to deploy, and I think friction is one of the things that we've got to not put into the mix when you start to control these applications, is at an action level. And some of you at the back, if you've not got your binoculars on, probably won't be able to see this, but I'll try and talk you through it a little. At an action level, we look at the risk of an action, and we give every single action within, for example, Dropbox or Salesforce, a default risk score. Okay? So going back to the blank stares I got when we talked about Salesforce, actions within Salesforce, logging into Salesforce, low risk, actually. You're just logging in. That's all you're doing. Logging into Dropbox, again, low risk. Downloading a file from Dropbox, medium risk. There's a risk it might be malware infected, but uploading a file to Dropbox, really high risk, especially given that you don't know what's in that file, whether it contains credit card information, personally identifiable information, and things that are going to cause you some real pain if you go down a GDPR fine route. And we give every action within those applications a baseline risk score. Now you can change this, but you don't need to. And one of the benefits of this is it means if you put this in a monitor mode, it will tell you quite quickly what the risky actions that your users are taking, and therefore the first step to managing a risk is understanding what that risk is. Does that make sense? Okay. So I don't think the original plan for categorizing all the applications and then telling the business what they're going to do is really a pragmatic approach. We have a different approach to it. And yes, it does start with monitoring, but it monitors user activity and actions. We do a lot of this with EBS. We've got customers who are using our web security capability to apply appropriate usage control, who are layering CASB or Cloud Application Control capability on top. When you monitor, you learn a lot. You learn about where your users are going and then what they're doing. And I am a salesperson. You get a good view of what your risk is, and then the hope is that, from my perspective at least, that you learn some things that were unexpected and you think it's worth investing in some cloud application control. But really importantly, I think, more pragmatically business focused, you understand what the intent of those users is. They're not using Dropbox to be malicious, mostly. They're using it to do their job. You can then define your risk appetite, and you can implement policy that's granular, that's user-centric. It can be based on department or user, category of web application, but also the risk of the actions within those, to implement a really granular policy, and we have templates for that work well in different verticals, legal, finance, manufacturing, etc., to apply some control and manage that risk with as little friction as possible. And I can't tell you the number of CASB projects that we've got involved in with our competitors where they've tried to implement them. It's broken too much stuff in the process, and they've stopped, and they've moved away from it. So we use this action risk methodology, ARM, lovely acronym, well done marketing. But really what it is a dynamic application catalog with lots of classes of application, file sharing, accounting, all those sorts of things. Lots of services in there, categorized by action. Every action is analyzed and then pressed up against a framework that says, okay, well, this is actually uploads a file is a common action across Dropbox and Box and OneDrive and Google Drive. So do you allow that generic action? We're constantly analyzing new applications. We'll never cover them all, but we add new ones, within 24 hours or so. And that then allows you to block all high-risk actions out with a single rule, for example, without breaking the application. People can still log in, do the low-risk actions, and then you can create exceptions for it. So really what we're trying to do is give you a very flexible toolkit that starts with monitoring of what's there to really let you deploy this quickly. It's not a 6-month project. To then fine-tune the policy, get really granular reports, and ultimately manage your business risk. There is significant business risk here around the loss of, Richard's lovely walk through the security into a data center. I have tried to carry a server through those weighing, through the little doors on the weighing scales. Interesting manoeuvre. The risk actually is not a physical one because they've got that taped. It's not a redundancy one. It is a data loss risk in reality to and from those applications in the cloud. And so, very quickly giving you an understanding of what that risk is, and then very quickly implementing some policy, some level of policy, without upsetting the business. And it's really, really important to do that. One of the ways we don't upset the business is through the architecture that we use. So we talked about the application risk methodology for our catalog. We also do this filtering, this CASB, without putting proxies in the way. The techies in the room will be familiar with proxies. I built the small extension on my house based on the first proxy company that I worked for. And that was the way to do things 15, 20 years ago. We've taken a totally different architecture, which I'll be very happy to talk any of you that are interested in it through after this, which has some significant benefits. It's an agent-based approach. It doesn't put latency into every single request to a cloud application. It still gives you very granular policy, but also your internet access isn't slowed down because the large customers on the hosted proxy service decide to do a massive video broadcast in the morning, and it slows everybody on the cloud down. So Direct Protect is another way that we let you, and with EBS's help, implement this kind of technology without breaking things and without upsetting your employees. So this is difficult to see probably for some of you at the back, but looking forward, where are we going with this? We talked a little bit. So this is a Gartner Horizon slide from their Tech Impact Radar. We have a secure web gateway capability, a web filtering, URL filtering capability that our CASB is layered on top of. We are looking at how we then extend this into their horizon. The next thing that we're beginning to look at, the next two things that we're beginning to look at are these areas here. So SSPM and CSPM. Who's got their acronym busters with them? Okay. Cloud Security Posture Management, SaaS Security Posture Management. Are your SaaS apps properly configured? Are your cloud apps, are your access to your cloud properly configured? Is multi-factor authentication enabled? Have you got the right policies on those things? With our CASB capability, especially the API mode version, which I haven't talked about today, we are uniquely placed to look at the configuration of your SaaS apps and your cloud apps to make sure that you're not inadvertently leaving a backdoor into those applications. So we are extending our capability to really help those of you that are moving into that hybrid mode, which I think is really where most mid-sized organizations are going to end up, the adoption of hybrid cloud. You will have some stuff in a data center, maybe an EBS's cloud. You will also be, I don't think there's any organization on the planet that won't be using a good number of SaaS apps. And so we are sitting right at the nexus of that and able to help you begin to control it. Okay. So just finally, and to wrap up, I think, really, what I've been talking about today is CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker, horrible jargon, that is entirely adjacent to our web filtering or secure web gateway capability that we've been successfully selling now for 8 or 9 years. What we do with EBS is offer a full suite of capability to cover what we call the major attack surface for a mid-sized organization. And so just very quickly to talk through that. Email security, that is, as it says on the tin, the ability to, on top of Microsoft normally, offer anti-spam, antivirus, phishing control, etc., at a very granular level on top of Microsoft. We talked about web and CASB. We also have a component, an identity component. in the platform. This really plays to the SaaS model as well. You know, putting multi-factor authentication in front of SaaS apps is pretty standard nowadays. The final bit, which some of you may not be aware of, but actually we've been doing a lot with the EBS team on, is security awareness training and phishing simulations along with that. So many companies are going through Cyber Essentials Plus. We're seeing insurance policies beginning to look for what level of employee training you're doing. We've launched a security awareness training module about 18 months ago, actually. It has a couple of nice benefits to it. I don't know whether being in an English accent is a benefit or not, but it's not an American accent. So that actually goes down very well in the UK, certainly. Lots of short cartoons, phishing simulations, using the interaction with those phishing simulations as an opportunity to train employees. And then obviously tie that SAT back or that activity back to training employees how to use SaaS apps securely, but then reinforcing the policies that we're putting in place for email security and CASB, underlining that with data loss prevention as well. So not just saying block upload of spreadsheets to OneDrive or Dropbox, but control uploads of spreadsheets that include passport numbers to OneDrive, that kind of granularity, so going a level further. So that's the capability. I think, really, any of you that are interested, I'll be around after this to have a further conversation, but the proof of the pudding is certainly in the eating with cloud application control. I think I would be surprised if there are many people in this room who knew every SaaS app that was being used by their business. And the visibility of that is eye-opening. Whether you then decide to do anything about that, at least at that point you've got an understanding of it, and you can write on a risk register somewhere that you're aware of it. But a trial, if it's of interest, the EBS team would be very happy to help you with that and give you visibility of what's going on. Then you can decide how to look at policy or accept the risk. So that's it from me. Thank you for your time.